You ever have one of those moments where you're so lost, it feels like the world itself is lying to you? Well, today, we are diving deep into three true stories. We've got a driver, a runner, and two kayakers, and they all went through something absolutely terrifying in the fog. But you'll see, the real horror wasn't what they thought they saw. It was what happened when their sense of reality just shattered. So let's just ask it straight up. We all know fog is creepy, right? But why? What's the actual reason behind that feeling? It's really not just about not being able to see. It's about what your brain starts to do when it can't trust the information it's getting. You know, the fog's real power, its greatest trick, is that it takes a world that's full of landmarks and signs and all the familiar things you rely on, and it just wipes the slate clean. It leaves you floating in this blank, gray void where it feels like the normal rules just don't apply anymore. This quote here, it comes from a guy who was driving the super lonely Highway 101 up in Northern California. He's tired, it's really late at night, and for him, the fog isn't just bad weather, it's actively messing with his head, twisting his perception of reality. And that makes it the absolute perfect stage for what's about to happen. So this disorientation, this is the first weapon the fog uses against you. It takes a place you trust, somewhere you know like the back of your hand, and it twists it until that place feels like an enemy. And here's a super important detail in all three of these stories. None of these people were rookies. You have a driver on a route he takes all the time, a college kid on a trail he's known since high school, and two expert kayakers who've practically lived on the water. They all believed 100% that they knew their environment inside and out. And this is exactly how the fog flips the script. A simple 3-mile loop for a runner, it turns into an endless nightmare. A huge, quiet bay for the kayakers, it becomes this terrifying echo chamber. And for the driver, well, for him, a lonely highway becomes a stage where impossible things can, and absolutely do, happen. Okay, so you're disoriented, you're vulnerable. The fog has basically stolen your map of the world. And that's when the second element always seems to show up, a presence. There's something else out there with you, but you can never, ever get a clear look at it. For the driver on Highway 101, it starts out kind of simply. He's peering through this thick haze, and he sees the shape of a man just standing there on the shoulder of the road. Not waving for help, not doing anything. Just standing, facing the road. Which is weird enough, you know. So he keeps driving, feeling pretty unnerved. But then, about 10 minutes later, he sees him again. The exact same guy, same clothes, same stance, somehow miles ahead of him on a road that has no intersections. The driver is the only car for miles. How is that even possible? Then, it gets worse. He sees the figure a third time, but now it's standing right in the middle of his lane. He slams on the brakes. And as he's sitting there freaking out, he glances in his rearview mirror and sees another person creeping up behind his car. He's totally boxed in. He swerves to get away, and that's when he feels this violent crash against his rear bumper. The other stories have a really similar unseen threat, but for them, it's all about sound. The runner, lost on this trail that never seems to end, starts to hear this low, droning moan. It doesn't sound human at all, and it perfectly matches his speed. He runs faster, it follows faster. For the kayakers, it's the rhythmic splash of oars from a rowboat they can't see. It's just always there, keeping the same distance, following every single turn they make. So the runner, he finally just bursts out of the woods, totally exhausted, and he turns back, and for the first time he sees what was chasing him. And it is not a person. It's this dark, swaying silhouette, something he figures is over 7 feet tall, just standing at the entrance to the trail, watching him. Now, after an experience like that, your rational mind just desperately tries to take back control, right? You start telling yourself, oh, I was tired, or I was scared. I must have imagined it all. But what makes these stories truly, truly terrifying is that moment when the physical, undeniable proof shows up. And this is the real conflict right here. For the driver, it's this battle between I had to have hallucinated it and the very real fact that his car was hit. For the runner, it's that gut feeling that something was deeply wrong, even though it's so easy to just blame a glitchy GPS. And for the kayakers, that simple explanation of it's just another boater is about to be completely shattered. When the driver finally gets home, he looks at his car, and the rear bumper is just destroyed. There is a massive dent running the entire width. The logical thought is, okay, he must have hit a guardrail when he swerved. But there's no paint transfer. not a speck. Something big and hard hit his car, but it left no trace of what it was. For the kayakers, the proof is somehow even more chilling. They find these fresh, wet footprints on the beach, and they follow them, and they lead right to the source of the sound, a small, dark wooden rowboat just pulled up on the sand. The footprints lead from that boat down the beach to the exact spot where they had just landed their kayaks, and then they just disappear into the trees. Somebody got to shore before them, knew exactly where they were going to land, and then vanished. So what does all this add up to? We have disorientation, we have an unseen threat, and then we have this impossible physical proof. This is where we get to the absolute heart of what makes these stories so deeply unsettling. See, it isn't the 7-foot-tall figure or the creepy rower that's the real source of the terror here. The true horror is the mental break. It's that moment when your brain is forced to hold two completely contradictory ideas at the exact same time. What I just experienced is impossible, and here's the physical proof that it actually happened. We can actually give this a name. You could call it environmental gaslighting. It's when the world around you, a trail you know, a road you've driven a dozen times, starts feeding you information that just doesn't add up. The environment itself is basically telling you that your own mind can't be trusted. And this quote from the driver, it just perfectly sums up that final struggle. He could accept hallucinating. He could accept being in a real car crash. But what he can't accept is hallucinating a threat that then causes a real physical crash. The proof that dent in his car, it doesn't solve the mystery. It makes it 1,000 times worse. And in the end, that's the question these stories leave us with. The fog lifts, sure, but that deep uncertainty, that stays. When you have concrete evidence that the world didn't work the way it's supposed to, the very foundation of your reality gets shaken. And if you can't trust your own senses, even when they're backed up by physical proof, well, what's left to trust?